I will say, from my vantage point, I believe if we may get a few more years of grace and mercy,
that if we're not careful, we'll theologically jump over in our hurriedness to read the Bible.
Greg Locke rose from a small-town pastor to a nationally known figure, gaining millions of followers through fiery sermons and controversial political views. But as his influence grew, so did questions about his credibility. What happens when a man known for exposing corruption becomes the center of controversy himself? Behind the headlines is a story of rapid fame, cultural conflict, personal turmoil, and public backlash that reshaped both his ministry and his reputation. The rise of an outspoken pastor. Greg Locke began his journey as a preacher with a raw, unfiltered style that immediately set him apart from many traditional pastors. His voice wasn't polished or rehearsed. It was angry, direct, and intensely personal. This approach resonated with people who felt ignored or frustrated by mainstream religious leaders. Locke's struggles and hardships in his early life often surfaced in his sermons, adding a layer of authenticity that many found compelling and relatable. Starting small in Tennessee, Locke's church, Global Vision Bible Church, grew steadily as his passionate preaching attracted local followers. But it wasn't just the local crowd that listened. His message spread rapidly online. He understood the power of the internet early on, realizing that emotional intensity was rewarded on social media platforms. Videos of Locke fiercely condemning cultural and political issues went viral, rapidly expanding his audience into the millions. Supporters admired Locke for speaking truths they believed others shied away from. They saw him as fearless, a preacher willing to tackle topics others avoided. He openly criticized mainstream churches and called out hypocrisy, creating a clear us versus them narrative that many felt validated their own frustrations. This boldness helped cement Locke's reputation as a no-holds-barred figure at a time when many Christians were searching for someone who seemed unapologetically honest. Despite the rapid growth and enthusiasm, warning signs appeared early on. Locke's sermons were not only emotional, but began to carry a tone of confrontation that went beyond spiritual teaching. His sermons started to feel like preparation for a battle, urging listeners to stand firm against perceived enemies. This shift hinted at a darker, more aggressive ministry that was developing beneath the surface. At its core, Locke's rise was fueled by the culture wars playing out across America. He neatly aligned his religious views with political outrage, becoming a voice for Christians who felt marginalized by shifts in society and politics. This fusion of faith and politics attracted both national attention and intense scrutiny. As his audience grew, so did the stakes of every sermon, every public appearance. Locke's style made him a magnetic figure, but it also marked the beginning of a path where controversy would become his calling card. His approach was polarizing from the start. While millions tuned in, many others found him alarming. This division would shape the tensions that followed as his influence expanded. The question looming over his rise was not just about his message, but about how far that message might go. Beneath this rapid ascent lay complex questions about motivation and impact. Was Locke a genuine truth-teller, or someone captivated by the power of outrage? The answers wouldn't be clear for some time. What is certain is that his early success was built on an ability to turn emotion into viral attention, setting the stage for an unpredictable future. Like many figures who rise quickly in the digital age, Greg Locke's early momentum carried both opportunity and risk. His story would soon evolve in ways that few could have foreseen, as the intensity of his ministry gave way to controversies that challenged everything he had built. The personal became public, and tensions that brewed beneath the surface were ready to spill into the spotlight. Controversial claims and darkening messages. Over the years, Greg Locke's sermons started getting more confrontational, and somehow religion and political outrage got tangled together more and more. At first, it was mostly about preaching for comfort or inspiration, but then his message shifted into more of a call to arms. He would go after policies, cultural changes, and certain institutions that he felt were quietly undermining his values and even his followers. And you could see it. Religion and politics mixed in such a way that church gatherings became like charged political rallies rather than a simple place to worship. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Locke's influence sort of surged, dramatically maybe, and it seemed powered by his loud opposition to public health measures. He made jokes about mask mandates and, quite publicly, said that people wearing masks would not be welcome at his church. Stuff like that really landed with a lot of viewers online, and it kicked off a huge debate. Like, almost immediately, critics thought Locke was reckless, dismissive of science, and overall not taking reality seriously. Supporters, on the other hand, took it as brave pushback against government overreach, even if it was messy. This time also shifted Locke's public image. Noticeably, to his followers, he looked like a champion of freedom, ready to go against what they called unnecessary restrictions. Still, all that controversy brought extra attention, and suddenly, his church felt like a main stage for these culture war fights. During sermons, flags were waved, and what began as religious services kind of drifted toward political rallies. You could see the lines between faith and political ideology get blurry in a way that was hard to ignore. Also, his tone got more aggressive, and that made the sense of enemies everywhere feel stronger, from government officials to media outlets, and even toward other religious leaders. He would imply that these people were not just mistaken, but actively evil. In his sermons, he started adding warnings about demonic forces slipping into America's institutions, and that created this mood of spiritual warfare. Some people said it was unsettling or heavy. That whole darker direction raised the question of where his kind of rhetoric might end up going later on. Alongside the growing intensity, Locke's declarations got more and more speculative, kinda conspiratorial too. He took up claims about election fraud, and he started hanging around controversial political figures, and in the same breath, political movements. That whole link to conspiracy-driven stories further polarized his audience. You could still see passionate supporters staying loyal, but a lot of Christians and former followers began pulling away, worried about where his sermons seemed to be going. And the sheer volume, along with the virulence of Locke's attacks, caused plenty of pushback. It wasn't just secular voices either. Religious communities also spoke out, openly criticizing him. Christian leaders warned in plain terms about how dangerous it is to spread fear and paranoia. Meanwhile, former members of Locke's church began sharing accounts of a ministry mood that felt driven by control, by fear, and by subtle pressure. So the tension inside the church and also outside of it kept rising, and it sort of painted a picture of a community increasingly defined by division and by that kind of separation. The personal drama that had been quietly unfolding behind the scenes soon added a new layer of complexity to Locke's story. Personal life under public scrutiny. By 2018, Greg Locke's personal life became entangled with the controversies surrounding his ministry, adding fuel to the fire of public debate. After more than 20 years of marriage, he announced his divorce from his wife, Melissa. The news shocked many members of his congregation and the wider community. But the controversy intensified when Locke later married Ty McKee, a church assistant who had worked closely with him. Rumors quickly spread online accusing Locke of an inappropriate relationship before the divorce was finalized. Locke denied these accusations repeatedly in public, but the timing raised suspicions that lingered among critics and some former supporters. This chapter of his life brought a deeply personal dimension to the controversies, where private struggles spilled into the public eye with unsettling intensity. Locke's willingness to speak openly about Melissa's mental health struggles added another level of complexity. He claimed she had spent time in treatment facilities and women's shelters, comments that some perceived as crossing a line. While some supporters defended his openness, others saw it as emotional manipulation. This disclosure blurred the boundaries between church business and personal family matters in uncomfortable ways. These events triggered unrest inside Locke's ministry. Former supporters began leaving the church amid growing concerns about the environment they described as controlling and fear-driven. Critics accused Locke of publicly humiliating people and fostering a culture of intimidation. Behind the public sermons and headlines, former church members spoke about an atmosphere that felt spiritually abusive, creating fissures within the community. Instead of retreating, Locke responded by intensifying his tone and message. His sermons grew louder and more urgent, blending warnings of spiritual danger with calls for loyalty and vigilance. This escalation further divided his audience, with some seeing him as standing firm against opposition, while others questioned the toll his leadership was taking on people's lives. The intersection of personal life scandals and ministry controversies painted a portrait of a ministry struggling under pressure from both inside and out. For some followers, Locke remained a fearless leader. For others, these conflicts raised doubts about the man behind the fiery sermons. The emotional weight of these events was becoming impossible to ignore. At the same time, Locke's increasingly unusual claims and practices would soon push the limits of public tolerance, transforming the narrative in unexpected ways. The collision of faith, politics, and personal turmoil would soon lead to episodes that challenged even his staunchest defenders. Witch accusations and spiritual warfare. In early 2022, Greg Locke's ministry took a sharp and unsettling turn when he publicly accused members of his own congregation of practicing witchcraft. Unlike figurative language used by some pastors, Locke insisted he had clear evidence. He claimed demons had revealed the identities of 6 witches within his church. This pronouncement shocked many and quickly spread across social media. The revelation blurred the lines between spiritual concerns and public spectacle, drawing both ridicule and genuine fear. The witch accusations were just the beginning of an intensified focus on spiritual warfare. Locke began hosting deliverance services, rituals meant to cast out demons and break curses, events that attracted both supporters and skeptics. These services often featured dramatic exorcisms and references to hidden spiritual battles. The church's atmosphere grew darker, moving away from traditional preaching to a heightened obsession with unseen, malevolent forces controlling members' lives. Locke's rhetoric became increasingly unsettling as he suggested that conditions like autism and mental illness could be manifestations of demonic oppression. This connection sparked fierce backlash from mental health advocates who saw such comments as stigmatizing and dangerous. Even many Christians distanced themselves from Locke's assertions, perceiving them as a harmful misunderstanding of medical issues. Despite the criticism, Locke doubled down on these claims, deepening the divide between him and parts of the broader Christian community. Adding to the spectacle, Locke's church began organizing public book burnings, targeting Harry Potter novels and other items they associated with occult practices. These fiery events evoked images of bygone eras, drawing comparisons to historically troubling moments of religious intolerance. The dramatic symbolism fueled the sense that Locke's ministry was becoming less about traditional faith and more about combating an enemy that seemed everywhere and nowhere. The impact on viewers was profound. Some saw Locke as a pastor courageously confronting evil, while others viewed the events as alienating and extreme. The intensity of these rituals and accusations raised fundamental questions about the direction the church was heading. For many longtime followers, what started as passionate preaching was now bordering on unpredictable fanaticism. At the same time, critics grew louder, warning that the church's tactics were creating a toxic environment. Former members described an atmosphere filled with fear and humiliation, where dissent was not tolerated, and doubt was seen as spiritual weakness. Stories emerged alleging that Locke publicly shamed individuals and that the ministry thrived on controlling its followers through intimidation. These claims painted a picture of a church losing its way amid escalating spiritual battles. Locke's enemies list also expanded. Beyond witches, he targeted politicians, medical professionals, other pastors, and even fellow Christians, labeling those who disagreed with him as part of the problem. This hostile posture reinforced the perception of the church as a fortress under siege, but it also isolated Locke from many traditional faith leaders and communities. The controversies surrounding his ministry reached a fever pitch. Yet, Locke's sermons continued to command attention online, feeding into an expanding culture of outrage and spiritual conflict. This relentless focus on darkness and confrontation seemed to consume not only his church, but Locke himself. The spiritual warfare that began as a metaphor appeared to become a lived reality, with consequences still unfolding in the public eye. As the fire of spiritual accusations raged, Locke's political entanglements deepened, tying his ministry to a broader movement shaking the nation. Political alignments and conspiracy. Involvement. Greg Locke's ministry increasingly became entwined with political movements and conspiracy theories, further blurring the lines between faith and partisanship. His public support for Donald Trump and vocal promotion of election fraud claims brought him into the orbit of some of the most contentious political debates of recent years. Locke appeared at events connected to the Reawaken America movement, known for its far-right activism and promotion of controversial ideas about government and society. This alignment energized his base, bringing larger crowds and a more fervent following. Church gatherings often featured political flags and slogans, transforming worship spaces into arenas for cultural warfare. For Locke and his supporters, this fusion of politics and religion was a necessary stand against a perceived assault on Christian values. But to critics, it marked a dangerous descent into sectarianism and misinformation. Such deep political entanglement caused concern even among fellow Christians. Many leaders publicly distanced themselves, warning about the risks of churches becoming vehicles for divisive conspiracy theories. Locke's encouragement to distrust major institutions and reject official narratives contributed to a climate of fear and mistrust. These messages affected not only public discourse, but also the cohesion and integrity of his own congregation. As political rhetoric intensified, Locke's attacks widened to include media outlets, medical experts, and other pastors who disagreed with him. This created an us versus them mentality that made compromise or conversation nearly impossible. The church became less a place of spiritual refuge and more a battlefield defined by suspicion and conflict. Followers were urged to see outside voices as enemies, which heightened isolation and defensiveness. Locke himself remained defiant in the face of mounting criticism. His sermons and social media presence only became more aggressive, feeding the cycle of outrage and attention. This escalation fueled his influence online, but also alienated moderate voices and concerned observers. The ministry's shift into political extremism overshadowed its original religious mission, leaving many to question its future. Through the noise and the battles, the foundation of this ministry was being tested, forcing a reckoning with the personal and public costs of its path. The storms gathering around Greg Locke's life and ministry would soon bring events that challenged everything he had built and believed. Crumbling credibility and personal tragedy. By 2026, the momentum Greg Locke built over years of controversy began to falter as cracks appeared in his credibility. His reputation, once anchored in bold accusations against high-profile figures, took a major hit when he publicly admitted that he lacked proof for some of his most explosive claims. This admission shocked many supporters who had trusted his certainty and fierce confidence. Locke's statement that he had been used as an amplifier sparked widespread questions about his judgment and accountability. The backlash was swift and intense. Critics accused Locke of recklessness and harming innocent people through unsubstantiated public accusations. Even some longtime supporters found themselves struggling to defend the pastor they once admired. When credibility erodes on such a public scale, the repercussions can ripple through a ministry, causing division and doubt. Locke's platform, once a beacon of fearless exposure, suddenly looked vulnerable and unstable. Legal troubles compounded the sense of disorder surrounding Locke's public life. He was arrested in Tennessee for driving on a suspended license.
Apparently, Greg Locke was arrested It says driving on a revoked, suspended, or canceled driver's license, and he was
A minor offense in isolation, but symbolically significant amid mounting controversy. Weeks later, a far more alarming event occurred when gunfire hit Locke's home, resulting in dozens of shell casings found at the scene. Authorities linked the incident to a family dispute, not church or political enemies, but online speculation exploded, further clouding Locke's already chaotic image. Inside the ministry, the pressure intensified. Former members continued to share stories of fear, manipulation, and emotional control, painting a picture of a church struggling under deep internal conflict. Allegations of public humiliation and spiritual abuse surfaced, deepening the divisions among those who remained loyal and those who left. Defenses of the church grew fiercer, but so did the separation among followers and critics. This fracture underscored the growing challenge of sustaining unity amid ongoing turmoil. Amid all this public and private upheaval came a tragedy that shifted the focus away from scandal and politics. Locke's son, Evan, had long struggled with addiction, a painful reality largely kept in the shadows. In 2026, Evan died following an overdose. The news brought a sudden and somber silence over much of the online battles that had defined Locke's recent years. For a moment, the public witnessed not the firebrand pastor, but a grieving father. The death of Evan Locke changed how many people saw Greg Locke. Even critics softened their tone, recognizing the profound pain behind the headlines and controversies. Beyond the viral clips and public disputes, there was a deeply human story of loss and suffering. Addiction was a long-term, complicated struggle that affected the family in a way no sermon or rally could fully address. Greg Locke's story is a powerful reminder of how controversy and conviction can both build and unravel a public figure. From a fiery rise to personal tragedy, his journey challenges us to consider the true cost of outrage and the complexity behind public personas. If you found this story insightful, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into the people shaping our world.